What's going on, guys? Chris Hardenberg here with Joe Passalacqua on the Movement Mindset, episode number 24. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit how training hard and working out hard can build mental toughness and not just change you physically, but help build mental toughness that can apply to life and business.
Remember like the early days of CrossFit, like people were like, oh, you're insane
Yeah.
for this stuff that you do. The component of it is it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
By design, and it attracts certain people to it. In the early days, it was much more of like a lot of people were like, oh, I want to compete, I want to compete, I want to compete. And then there was the whole avenue, the health and wellness avenue. Okay. Something that I kind of like we discuss on a regular basis and our direction of the business, okay, and how it kind of relates to creating mental toughness is I like to look at it from a quote of like, the harder it is, the greater the story it is.
Sure.
Okay. So if a lot of you know my background, I struggled for a really, really long time in this business. And now we have the largest privately owned micro gym business in New Jersey.
Right.
And we're growing at an unbelievably fucking rapid pace.
Right.
Okay. And conceptually, based on that, the harder it is, the greater the story is. I want to be able to tell that story. Okay. If it comes up in conversation, I don't blatantly just like go like, oh, listen to all this shit. Right. And you know that about me. I don't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Unless it comes up in a conversation. It's more other people telling other people.
Yeah.
Okay. The outcome is that much more enjoyable based on knowing that you accomplish something mentally. That's very, very hard. Off air, we just talked about this. People that don't know me, I can handle an unbelievable amount of stress and continue to function normally.
Right.
Okay. A lot of people can't do that. And it's not something that I could do like immediately. It was kind of something that was kind of bred over time.
Yeah.
Because it's understanding the relevancy of what's important and what's not, or like, this shouldn't affect me. This person's opinion shouldn't affect me. Right. And it does, and it like bottles and like, you know, you get mad. And it's like, there's no reason, but it's understanding that if I put my head down and I figure this out, the outcome is going to be fantastic for me to laugh about.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like on episode 17, we talked about mental toughness and how it's important to why mindset is important to results and ways you can build it. And, you know, there's ways if you were to try to exercise easier ways than maybe, let's just face it, there's easier ways to do it than how we do it. Mm-hmm. Right. But why I think it's important is because if I'm someone who's struggling with something personally, there's reps mentally to go through hard things that allows you to face those other hard things with an easier time.
It's like a baby steps.
Exactly. So you talked about like you can handle an unbelievable amount of stress now, but 10 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to handle the stress that you can now at that time.
Of course not.
And so it's life reps, but then in the gym, it's like we've both been in workouts where you're like, it's not actually, but it feels like you're on the brink of death. And you're just like, you just have to.
And I look over at Chris, I go, I'm going to beat you, dude. Yeah. Whether I do or don't, I'm going to sacrifice myself.
Yeah.
But there's more to that than that, because me and Chris are very competitive against each other. But at the same time, we're both benefiting from that push and drive, whether it's in exercise or in work.
Yeah. And so what that allows you to do is be like, man, if you can find that next gear and learn how to do that, then when you apply it to business or life, it's like, okay, I've been in an uncomfortable spot and found that next gear. I mean, we talked about it off air and you said, I really want you to touch on this, is like, for those of you that don't know my story at all. So I was a wrestler for 15 years. And for those of you that don't know the sport, in my opinion, I'm biased, it's 100% brutal. Yeah. Every workout's hard. You're battling another person, you're cutting weight, and I loved it. And so it kind of builds up some mental metal to be able to handle some things. And I think where some of that got fleshed out and where maybe I've built up some resiliency was prior to working for you guys, I was a teacher, or for us, I should say, I was a teacher. And without getting into it too much, I got a contract for what was going to be my last year to get tenure. There was a miscommunication about something. I was offered a coaching job that I declined. Didn't know that was a test, that if that whether or not I accept it was basically the means of me retaining my job. And then in July, I got told that I was no longer employed there. And my wife, who had just had my son, who was 1, couldn't go back to her teaching job because she told him she wasn't going back. So in the summer of July, I had a mortgage, a 1-year-old, a wife, and no job. And I vividly remember sitting in my room being like, what am I going to do? And
like
so
all at once this happened.
All at once.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a job at a local gym. My wife was supportive of my dreams. She's like, you've been wanting to do this for a long time. No better time than now to try it out. And I loved the gym I was going to. And I was like, I can do this. So they hired me, made all these promises to me. Unbeknownst to me, it was a train wreck behind the scenes. And so a couple months later, the business is taking a tank. They have no money. I'm barely making an income, and I have to sell my house and move in with my parents. At 30 years old, right, or 29 years old, however old I was, my wife, my pregnant wife, and my at the time 2-year-old had to move in with my parents. Like, talk about a kick to the ego. Like, I was like,
kick right in the dick.
Right in the dick. I was like, I am a failure as a husband and a father. That's literally how I felt. So fast forward now, I'm working for you. Joe literally says to me, when we talked about on a previous episode, like he wanted to hire someone and figure out how to pay him later. For those of you that don't know, he hired me and was like, hey, I need a salesperson. I want to hire you. I can only pay you on commission. So I went from having a steady salary to like, all right, I'm commission only. And I had no choice but to try to figure it out. Long story short, we figured it out, hit some roadblocks, but all's well that ends well. I have 2 beautiful kids, a wife who loves me, and a house in Denville. But I say all that to say that I'm no special person. It was like I had to build up the resiliency and the mental toughness to handle
something
those
like
things.
That would break a normal person.
Right. And so, but it wasn't, again, I'm not special. What I'm trying to get at is because I had all these reps of whether it was through wrestling or my father basically preaching into me from a young age, like if you don't like something, fix it, don't moan about it. Like getting those mental reps allowed me to handle it when stuff hit the fan as an adult. And so basically what I'm talking about is inside our gyms, because of how we do the training, if you approach it at full efficacy and try your hardest in these things, you can reap some of those rewards because as you know, and I know, there's always going to be something, whether it's business or in life, that you're going to, no matter how old you are, that you're going to be like, oh man, how am I going to handle this now?
Life is opportunity based.
Yeah.
And it's the opportunity that you create for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny that you said that, like, about your dad. When I was a kid, I used to hate my mom about this. She'll listen to this and she'll laugh about this. I also wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
Right. And I was going to nationals in Fargo.
Yeah.
Remember the freestyle Greco-Roman nationals out there? And I was at a training camp in Cornell, in upstate New York. And I got in a weird position and my hip popped, right?
Oh.
Weird. It was like a weird position. Remember going home, like, I have nationals next week. So I keep training. I'm training. And I'm like, Mom, my hip hurts really bad.
Yeah.
I think there's something wrong.
Yeah.
She goes to me, stop being a pussy. But if you know my mom, that's kind of how she always was with me, right? I was the only boy in the house. I grew up in a house of girls. And it was, it almost like predetermined you to like figure things out on your own.
Yeah.
And I told her recently, like, how much I appreciated that later in life. I hated it then because you get singled out and it's like, oh, my mom's mean to me. The moral of the story was I actually had a cracked hip.
What?
Yeah, I had a stress fracture and I literally had a crack in my fucking hip.
Oh my God.
Right. And I went to nationals and wrestled and I found out like literally a month after that. But anyways, my point being is you're a subject of the outcome that you create.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about mindset in training, weight loss, all these things, we've talked about it in so many of our episodes and a lot may seem redundant, but when we have a client that has success, they're listening to what they're doing, but they're genuinely want to change themselves.
Right.
Okay. It's them actually wanting to educate themselves to actually better themselves. Whether it's, I want to get better athletically. I want to be better because I want to play with my kids. I want to lose weight. That's the component of the mindset. People genuinely, in my opinion, they don't really want to change.
Right.
Okay. Because people cannot handle pressure outside of their daily lives.
Well, and it's more so of like, when things get hard, a lot of people fold. And I think a lot of it is like our culture, American culture has moved a lot to like, hey, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it.
Acceptance of whatever you feel to be normal is normal. And that's fine. You and me do not agree with that.
Right. It's like, hey, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. And it's like, well, there's maybe some aspects that's true in some areas, but there's plenty of areas where it's like, no. Yes, this is not fun. I mean, I think you know this. I really love my job. There's plenty of things in my job on a week-to-week basis that I don't want to do. But it's like, I love what I do and I'm so purpose-driven that it's like, yeah, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this.
Because you understand the outcome of it.
Yes.
It's no different than counting macros and understanding basic nutrition. right? There's no difference of that. But the sheer fact of like what I just said is it's like the acceptance of what is the masses. I mean, we talked about in a lot of episodes, diabetes grows between 4 and 6% every single year in America.
Right.
Okay. We have an obesity epidemic in the country where there's over 70% of people are considered overweight, obese, or morbidly obese.
Yeah.
Children, right?
Yeah.
Over 50% in those same categories. Okay. Because what's happening is, I mean, I'm just going to be real. From a business perspective, it gives me and Chris an endless amount of clientele base to try and help and educate. But it is really sad that the majority of those people are never going to better themselves because of the outcome of the expectation of, okay, this is acceptable for now. How many people that were getting to the age where a lot of people that we went to high school with are starting to have kids, they have families, they're married, and they look awful.
Right.
Overall, I'd say well over 70, 80% of people.
And they struggle to keep up with their kids.
Yes.
And so it's like, again, just to circle back to the main topic, it's like, okay, making those changes, regardless of what they are, is hard. And being able to build resiliency to do the hard, I mean, I literally say this to my kids. My kids are 9 and 6 and they don't want to do something. I'm like, you can do hard things. And it sounds ridiculous and woo-woo, but it's like, no, embedding in these kids that's like, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's bad and you can still do it. And our training and the way we go about our classes, it's like, everyone's difficult is different, right?
It means
like,
that you don't think that you're good enough.
Right.
When my kids, same thing. When they say this is too hard, right?
Yeah.
When Ellie says that, she's 6, right? It's the same thing, but it's no different than when an adult says, oh, that's really difficult. Okay, I get that, but it doesn't mean that it's out of the question for you not to be able to do that.
Yeah, because they're forgetting the second part. Like you could admit like, yes, this is difficult, but you can still do the work that's needed to get there. And again, everyone's difficult in the gym looks different. So a great example is like what's hard for Joe is going to look different than the person who just walked into our gym, right?
Of course.
Like for Joe, it's like, it's really hard to try to clean 315. For the other guy, it's like, man, it's really hard for me to get to the bottom of an air squat.
It should not be that hard.
Yeah, I know.
It is now. Shit hurts.
But it's like one of those things where it's like, cool, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But it's like, keep doing the hard thing, keep training hard, keep pushing yourself because you're going to reap the rewards inside the gym. And then outside the gym, when you get posed with something that's hard, you can go back and be like, hey, I remember when trying to lose the weight was hard and I did that, I could handle this.
Yeah, and that goes with everything. And we use the example of if you push yourself in an athletic setting or in an accomplishment basis.
Yeah.
We just talked about this. You set little goals for yourself and you kind of build forward towards that. And that's the easiest way. It's very, very hard for people to just be like, it'd be like smoking. It's like most people can't just stop smoking.
Right.
Right. Most people cannot just stop drinking one day completely.
Right.
This is kind of, it's how it works.
Yeah.
Right. So componently, right. And I deal with stuff like that too. I just like, sometimes I just can't stop. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we all deal with those problems. But when you know that you can accomplish something, whether from a fitness perspective and you have progress, what's stopping you from progress of other things in your
Exactly.
life? Okay. So that's why we always use a component. If you can mentally create toughness in yourself on, wow, this was unbelievably hard and I finished it and I did it at whatever skill level you are.
Yes.
How does then that not translate to your work, to your personal life and anything else that you're trying to accomplish?
Absolutely. And so guys, that's really the main crux of it is utilizing what you do in the gym, utilizing how hard we train to build mental toughness. And we talked about it in a previous episode regarding our core values. That's why our gyms are fulfillment centers or part of why they're fulfillment centers.
And we're literally relentless on our goal orientation.
Exactly.
And that's why our client experience and development is at the top front of what we do.
Yeah. So guys, I hope you like that one. Hope that provides some insight. Continue to show up to the gym, continue to push yourself in the workouts, reap the benefits on the fitness side, but also utilize those benefits on the personal side as well. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube as usual. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
See ya.